It's time for ROTD Weekend. An exciting weekend. It is the big game day tomorrow. You know, I don't actually watch the game, but I will be sitting down with my family, none of whom also really watches the game, to eat delicious snack foods and to watch the commercials and the halftime show. So I thought I'd take a few moments at the beginning of the show to tell you what I'm planning to make tomorrow. And then my guest today is Christina Jolam from Weekday Pescatarian. And I specifically asked her to come on the show today because it is almost Valentine's Day. This is the last Saturday before Valentine's Day, in fact, and I know that she has amazing seafood ideas that are perfect for that special date night kind of dinner. So before I talk to Christina and before I tell you my menu for tomorrow, I wanted to remind you about the survey that I am doing to find out what kinds of recipes, what kinds of topics you are looking for from me and from my website and from this podcast. We are doing a draw, actually. So if you fill out the survey and provide your email address, which we promise to not use for anything else, but if you provide your email address, then you will be entered to win one of 5 Amazon gift cards for $25 each. So you can go and have a chance to win and also tell me what you want to hear. And I'm getting some great answers. I've been reading them. You know what? I have to tell you, it has been like really, really sweet and kind. So many of you have written nice things about my podcast, my voice, my recipes, in addition to telling me what you're looking for. So I just wanted to say thank you. Every time I see one of those, it makes my day. And that's been a real unexpected and nice thing to have happen. But yeah, if you haven't already, go and fill out the survey. You could get there at cookthestory.com/2025survey. And the link is in the show notes for this podcast. So you can also just tap that link and it'll take you right there. So we are not having a party or having people over or anything tomorrow. Honestly, it's been really hectic lately and we have some travel coming up, my kids in particular, and everybody just wants to keep things pretty calm. So it's just going to be the 4 of us here tomorrow. And so I decided to make 4 different things, one a favorite of each of us, but something that we all enjoy. So that is what my sort of plan of attack in coming up with that like meal plan or party plan was. And so I'm starting by telling you my son's favorite appetizer, or one of them anyways, is that classic taco dip. You know, the one, it's like cream cheese and sour cream mixed with taco seasoning, and then you top it with cheddar cheese, lettuce, tomato, green onions, and sometimes olives. So the weird thing about that dip, and I probably have told you this before, is that I hadn't made it in years. It's something that I had when I was growing up. I think my TikTok video says that it was at every baby shower and backyard barbecue that I went to as a kid, something like that, right? So I hadn't had it in a very long time and then was craving it. So I decided to make it for the website, like test some things out and do the recipe and take pictures of it and all of that. And so I had a couple of batches of it in the fridge one Friday when my kids got back from their dad's place and they were hungry and they wanted a snack. And I was like, oh, here, try this. And my son had like 2 bites of it and just sort of like wrapped his arm around the pie plate that it was like all in. It was like, I'm just taking this to my room. And he did. And then he's requested it since then a few times. So that is one of his favorites. So we're doing that one for sure. And then all of us really like shrimp, and Marty in particular loves shrimp cocktail and cocktail sauce. He especially likes when I make it because I put like extra horseradish in it, and the horseradish I buy is extra spicy. I know I've told you, you buy your horseradish in the refrigerated part of the grocery store where the refrigerated pickles are, not in the like shelf stable aisle. If you buy that refrigerated horseradish, it is so much spicier. It's just so good. It's so great in cocktail sauce. I will, of course, link to my cocktail sauce recipe for you, but whatever you're doing, even if you're buying store-bought cocktail sauce, just put some of that horseradish into it, a little bit extra into there. Unbelievable. You're going to love it. So I'm doing the shrimp cocktail, and I will say I had a little bit of like a tough choice between the shrimp cocktail, which is one of Marty's favorites, and one of his other favorites, which is like a queso, especially done in the slow cooker. But I decided that since we're doing the taco dip, it's kind of queso-like. I mean, not really, but like sort of another like tortilla chip dip. So that's why I went with the shrimp cocktail. And then one of my daughter's favorite foods in the world is chicken wings. She orders them all over the place. No matter where we go, if they have chicken wings on the menu, just about she orders them. Well, sometimes she chooses meatballs, but chicken wings, those are a sure win for her. And so I'm doing that new brined chicken wing recipe that I've told you about, where you brine them in a saltwater solution with some baking powder added to the liquid, and it changes the texture of the skin and makes it extra crispy when you bake it. And I am doing that with the pizza seasoning, which is one of our favorites to have on wings. It's just kind of like, it smells like a pizzeria, like when you make this seasoning blend, but it's got like some of the ingredients in pepperoni, like some fennel and garlic, and then oregano, like in pizza. It's just really, really good. You're going to love that if you haven't tried it before. That pizza seasoning is great. And for some reason, it's really good on wings, just really great. And then that brings me to my favorite. And I'm sure you've already guessed that it involves cheese. It is, in fact, my favorite baked brie recipe, which is not sweet like a lot of them out there. There are no nuts, there's no dried fruits, there's no cranberries, and there's no puff pastry. This is a garlicky red pepper baked brie. You basically take your wheel of brie, put it on a pan, and then you poke holes in the top of it. And then you mix together garlic and chopped red pepper and like chives. And I think there's a little bit of mustard in there and olive oil. You mix that up with some seasoning, and then you put that on top of the brie and you leave it for at least an hour. And that flavorful oil mixture kind of drips down into the holes and flavors the inside of the brie, the like gooey part. Then you bake it. And then when you spread that on crackers, it's like this garlicky, cheesy, amazing thing. So that is probably my favorite all-time appetizer, and I am making it. And you know what? Nobody else in my house likes brie. I guess I kind of lied to you at the beginning. I said I chose 4 things that everybody likes. I chose 3 things that everybody likes, 1 for each of them, and then I chose something for me that I'm the only one who likes it. Nobody else likes brie in my house. Go figure. They're nuts, right? And I guess along with those 4 like appetizer snack foods, I will put out some crackers and some cold veggies and probably some fruit. And yeah, that's going to be our fun dinner Super Bowl party of favorites. And I will put the links to all of those recipes in the show notes for this podcast episode. Or if you go to cookthestory.com and search on there, you will find them all very easily. Oh, and I'd love to know what you're making if you're doing anything for Super Bowl. So I will post in our Facebook group and ask what you guys are making, and you can let me know there. The Facebook group is facebook.com/groups/recipeotd. And of course, that link will be in the show notes as well. So you could just tap on that and head over there. Oh, wow. I have talked for way longer than usual at the beginning. You know me, I start talking about food and I can't stop, which is how this whole podcast started, right? So as mentioned, I am speaking today with weekday pescatarian Christina Jolam, who I actually met in person in Denver at a blogging conference, almost a year ago. And we just like really clicked and got along. And I found her very kind and interesting, passionate about food, about seafood. And she lives in Portugal, which involved kind of a life change because she moved there from the States. And yeah, so I really wanted to have her on to talk about that change for her and her love of seafood, and to give us an amazing recipe for date night Valentine's Day coming up. So you are going to love Christina. Her Instagram is beautiful. You need to check that out as well. She makes such beautiful videos. That is weekday_pescatarian on Instagram. And now here is my conversation with Christina Jolam of Weekday Pescatarian. Christina, welcome to the show.
Oh, Christine, great to be here.
I am so excited to talk with you. We met in person almost a year ago, and it was a wonderful time. And now we are recording, and it's just a lovely conversation we've been having. Now we're going to share some conversation with the listeners specifically. So your site is Weekday Pescatarian.
That's right.
How did you decide that you wanted to just spend all of your time cooking fish and writing about fish?
So, about 3.5 years ago, I moved to Lisbon, Portugal with my husband. We could both work remotely. And so we took the leap and moved over here. And I had always lived kind of in middle America. Was born in Chicago and then spent a lot of my years in Tennessee. So, lived nowhere near the ocean. So, moving a little outside of Lisbon along the coast gave me access to seafood that I had never seen before and certainly never had access to on a regular basis. And I was already a really confident cook. I loved cooking, had traveled quite a bit and cooked all over the world, taken culinary classes. And so living here kind of opened up that last frontier of cooking for me, which was confidently cooking seafood. It just was something I wasn't very comfortable with. I had kind of my go-to salmon, my go-to shrimp recipe, but beyond that, I just wasn't really comfortable with it. And so I took it as a personal challenge to make and eat seafood 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends, just to eat whatever I wanted, just to kind of get myself more familiar with it. And so that's what I did. And it was just for me. And I was going to do it for a month. And after a month, I was like, that's amazing. I love this life. And so I started the Weekday Pescatarian blog to help other people cook seafood with confidence as well.
I love that. That is so exciting. So you moved out to Portugal and changed how you eat all kind of at once. And now you're writing about it too. Okay, I want to know, this is maybe not exactly the right question. Everybody's thinking, oh, I want to hear about Christina's life in Portugal. I want to know, for those of us who aren't living in Portugal and don't have access to all of that seafood, have you learned anything in this time that can help people like that? People who live where you used to live in Chicago and in
Mhm.
Tennessee. What can they do?
Where most of my family and friends still live.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So let me tell you my favorite seafood secret, which is maybe the worst kept secret in the industry, that the fresh fish, quote unquote, fresh fish at your grocery store fish counter, a lot of that was previously frozen. And so it was thawed in the store and then laid on ice and sold there. So even with you, if you buy fresh fish, often you're buying previously frozen fish. And while that sounds kind of off-putting, I would say it's great news for inland home cooks because it tells you that cooking with frozen seafood is possible and, in fact, can be really delicious. I can see the ocean from the windows I'm sitting in front of right now. And I still cook with frozen fish a lot of nights because
Really?
frozen fish is often caught and cleaned on the boat and then frozen immediately. So it's really frozen at the height of its freshness. It's often a better quality than quote unquote fresh fish that's been sitting out kind of waiting to be sold for a couple of days. And it's more affordable and it's available year round, no matter where you live, if it's inland, if it's next to the coast. So it's just a great option. It's often really budget friendly as well.
So what you're saying is interesting because I know my grocery store often has the previously frozen label on things. And I try to not choose that if I'm choosing the quote unquote fresh fish. But now I'm actually even realizing that even if it hasn't been previously frozen, it has been a while, some amount of time since it was caught and has just been like sitting on ice in a cooler for all of that time. Whereas, yes, if it's frozen, I know like the Alaska salmon, they freeze it like right there as they're processing it, and it's as fresh as could be. So I hadn't really thought that through.
Yeah, it's so when you get when you buy frozen fish, there are things you can look for. Being in a kind of individual cryovac packs is really important because that keeps it very fresh. It keeps the air out. Thawing it properly, so you want to thaw it in your refrigerator overnight if possible. You want this to be a gentle process. You don't want any kind of shocking temperatures until you start to cook the fish. If you've run out of time and you need to thaw it, you can thaw it in cold water. And that should take for individual fillets maybe 30 minutes to kind of thaw through.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot, if you treat the fish properly, you can have a great experience. And a quick story, we just hosted some friends over at the house and I had made a salmon dish. And these are really good cooks, like kind of chef level cooks. And he was eating and he said, boy, you can really tell the difference when you cook with, really good fresh salmon versus that frozen stuff you get in the grocery store. So, Christina, I really can't tell you how much joy it brought me to kind of lean across the table in a stage whisper and say, it was frozen. Because
Oh, I love it.
it was a great example of how even with really great cooks, we can get stuck in the mindset that seafood at home just isn't practical because we don't live on the coast. And I am here to say it really is a great option for us.
Okay, so I do shrimp from frozen all the time. I always have. There's a bag of frozen shrimp in my fridge all the time. And I think there's two right now, actually, because I can just reach for them and I know it's going to be a quick meal. I don't tend to keep other kinds of frozen fish there. So, which ones, if you know, like what are the best ones, or does it even matter? And then, okay, thawing we did. I kind of want to know. So I thaw it in the package and then take it out of the package. Do you pat them dry? Is there anything special that you're going to do to have that amazing fool the chef experience?
For sure. Drying frozen fish is going to be really critical. So once it's thawed, drying it really well with paper towels. If you don't believe in paper towels, you can certainly use an absorbent tea towel,
Mhm.
but removing any excess moisture is going to be important for your final product. And some applications that's not going to matter as much. If you're making, baked cod in the oven that's well seasoned for fish tacos, you can put that on a rack and any excess moisture can drop through the rack as it bakes. If
Mhm.
you're trying to do a nice crispy skin seared salmon, it's going to be really important that that fish is dry. And so
Right.
drying it is kind of a key component to getting that restaurant quality fish at home.
Mhm. And so you mentioned cod, salmon. I do sometimes have tilapia in my freezer. Is there anything else that you think are like
Tilapia is a
go-tos?
great Tilapia is a great option. I would say mahi mahi. The texture of mahi mahi is very firm, and so it lends itself well. It can shed the water well. So whether you're going to grill that or pan sear it or even put it into the air fryer, mahi it freezes and thaws very well. So that's a go-to for me as well, and it's great in fish tacos or
Mm.
even under the broiler.
Okay, and so once you've patted them dry, are there any other special things we should be keeping in mind when cooking fish that was frozen a moment ago?
I think the drying is really the important kind of critical component, and then being sure that you're seasoning it well. And that's going to depend on the cooking method that you're using. So if you're pan searing, I would do, a really aggressive salt with that because you're going to lose some of that flavor. But I wouldn't do a ton of other spices if you're trying to get a crispy skin because you don't want to burn that. Baking it off in the oven, you have a world of options, even with the air fryer, because that's going to be a really a quicker cook time. You
Hmm.
have a world of options, whether that's a panko crumb or just a straight seasoning if you're doing a low carb thing.
Hmm.
So you do have some really good options there. And I should mention that if you run out of time and you're not able to do the full overnight defrosting in the refrigerator, if you're doing any kind of shellfish, that is not recommended to just leave on your counter. You really want to
Hmm.
have that in a bowl of ice cold water to thaw. It will thaw extremely quickly. Don't put, lukewarm or warm water in there. Make sure it's icy just for food safety reasons.
Actually, that leads me to a great question. People who listen know that I talk about this. So I sometimes cook fish and shellfish straight from frozen, the tilapia and the shrimp, both. Those are the ones that I have been known to do that way. And I'll tell you, I don't know if you've heard me talk about this, Christina. It wasn't my idea originally. It was the Alaska Seafood Organization put together a cookbook promoting cooking straight from frozen because I think for convenience and their chefs have kind of found that with so much of their seafood, it is frozen during the year
Hmm.
because it's
Hmm.
only got that short season, right? And so they wanted home cooks to feel confident. And so I do it sometimes. Is that something you recommend or have you tried it or should we thaw it first?
So I have tried it. And Christina, I should have known because you've been on this bandwagon for a while, but I am a recent convert to the air fryer and I resisted it for years. And now I am deeply in love with it. And I've developed some recipes for cooking fish from frozen, both fish and shrimp. I've done salmon, I've done tilapia, I've done a catfish, and for
Mhm.
shrimp and found it to be an excellent product. And so I no longer turn my nose up at
Mhm.
cooking from frozen because it just, especially with the combination of the particular kind of high heat
Mhm.
and airflow that you get in the air fryer, I've seen it be extremely effective cooking the fish and getting a really nice sear on it. I do start it a little bit lower. So basically I'm thawing it in
Mhm.
the air fryer for maybe the
Right.
first 4 or 5 minutes and then I take paper towels and I, mop it off to make sure that I get as much of that liquid out as possible. But again, in
Mm.
an air fryer, you're probably cooking it on that rack or
Mhm.
plate. So
Mhm.
any excess moisture is falling away anyway. But then you're able to get a really beautiful crispy coating on it or a
Huh.
great, sear with seasoning. It's proven really effective. So if you are an air fryer fan, you've got to try the frozen fish in the air fryer.
Okay, so I knew I was going to learn so much from you. It's so clear. Okay, I've never patted it dry in the middle, and I never get a sear on mine either. And because of that, that's why I always do some kind of crumb coating or a sauce. So it's because it's like
I'm a big fan of that.
yeah, it's like Wednesday, and I'm like, oh shoot, what am I making? I've got that, the shrimp, I've got whatever it is, and we're just going with it. So if I wanted to actually get the fish to brown, open it after a few minutes, pat it dry, and then continue, add something, then what do you do?
So what I have done there, I have two methods that I've used. With frozen shrimp, what I have found to be most successful, because you are still going to get a lot of liquid seeping out of the
Hmm.
shrimp,
Hmm.
is I cook that straight through from frozen. And then I make in a measuring cup in the microwave a lemon butter garlic sauce with a little Dijon and fresh herbs. So the shrimp comes out, it's piping hot. You toss it in the lemon butter garlic sauce and you serve it, over rice, on mashed potatoes, just with a fork and a baguette, whatever floats your boat. So that's how I've done the frozen shrimp. With frozen seafood, once you defrost it in the air fryer and then pat it dry with the paper towels, what I have found a lot of success doing is mixing whatever seasoning. And I like to season pretty aggressively. So you could use like a blackening seasoning or, a seafood seasoning like an Old Bay or Red Lobster seafood seasoning, and then mix it with rice flour. I find a lot of success with rice flour. You could also use cornstarch, that works. And then sprinkle just the top. I'm not going to mess with the bottom. Most of this fish is quite thin.
Hmm.
So, you're going to lose most of what's on the bottom. So season pretty aggressively on that top side. And then just like I would with a blackened seafood, where I'm going to sprinkle a dry piece of fish with blackening seasoning, and then I'm going to brush it with melted butter because that kind of helps that blackening
Hmm.
process.
Hmm.
I'm going to take the top of the fish and I'm going to dot it with melted butter, put it back in the air fryer, and then just blast it at 400 for, the last however many minutes it needs to cook. Depends on how thick your fillet is, but maybe 8 minutes. And you can get a really nice, I just did a catfish recipe like that and it turned out really beautifully.
So wait, where was the rice flour?
So the rice flour is mixed with your seasoning mix. So let's
Oh.
say, I don't remember off the top of my head, but let's say it's a tablespoon of rice flour and a tablespoon of seasoning mix, and you're going to combine those two and then season the top of the fish aggressively while it's in the basket, brush it with the melted butter, and then 400 degrees. If your air fryer runs cool, you may want to pump it up to like 425. Mine runs very hot, so 400 is a good fit.
I'm putting rice flour on my grocery list now. I don't think I've ever cooked with it. And it just browns really well is the idea.
Yeah, and it really does give you a bit of a crisp. I mean, it is not a deep fried situation, but kind of that same thin shell of a crispiness you get on a blackened seafood if you did it in a skillet. I get that same, it's reminiscent of that
Oh,
texture.
I love it. That is brilliant. I can't wait to try. Okay, we're going to change direction a little bit, although I'm guessing it's still going to be fish related. So, Valentine's Day is coming up. Fish could be very special. Do you have a recipe that you can tell me about? Our surprise recipe? Does it happen to be something that is special and fishy?
It is seafoody for sure.
Okay.
It is one of my very favorite seafood recipes, and it is truly foolproof. It's a restaurant style creamy seafood sauce for lobster ravioli.
I love that. So it's the sauce that you put on the lobster ravioli.
Exactly. So if you love seafood, but you're a little intimidated and you're thinking, I don't know if I want to pull off a new recipe for Valentine's Day with my significant other, if you're hosting a Galentine's event or having some friends over, this is a great option because a lot of people love going out to Italian restaurants for Valentine's Day anyway. They're going to be packed. So make your own at home. Just go to Trader Joe's or whatever your favorite grocery store is, grab a nice quality pack of lobster ravioli, and then we're going to make this sauce that is probably going to put your local Italian restaurant to shame. So,
Oh, I'm excited. Okay, where do you start when making the sauce?
we'll start with the store-bought ravioli.
Okay.
And we are going to cook that about a minute less than the package instructions. So you're going to, start a pot, salt it aggressively. You're going to boil off your ravioli about a minute less than it calls for. And then you're going to use a measuring cup and pull out about a half a cup of that kind of salty, starchy pasta water and save that because we'll use a little bit of that for our sauce later on. And then you're going to drain your pasta. And so with these filled pastas, I really find it much better to use either like a spider strainer or just a slotted spoon instead of just dumping the whole pan over because you could turn your lobster into little pieces
Mhm,
of
mhm,
pasta.
mhm,
So
mhm.
we'll strain that and keep all of that off to the side. And then while that's cooking, actually, you can start your sauce. So we're going to melt
Can I
two
wait?
tablespoons.
Can
Yeah.
I interrupt you, Christina?
Hmm.
The lobster ravioli, they're sitting now in the strainer. At some point, they're sitting in the strainer while you're making this. Do they start sticking together or anything? Do we need to use any oil or are they going to be fine?
Exactly. So what we're going to do is just drizzle a little bit of olive oil, and I don't want to say toss, that's too aggressive, but just make sure that the pasta is coated in a little coating of olive oil so that it does not stick together.
Okay, great.
The sauce is only going to take a few minutes to kind of pull everything together. It will probably take less time than it takes me to talk through it, and so it's a pretty quick process as we go through this, and the sauce will be started wet as the pasta's cooking.
Gotcha. Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we're going to melt 2 tablespoons of butter in a saucepan over about medium heat. We don't want the butter to be like splattering on us. We just want it to be kind of a slow bubble.
Mhm.
We're going to add a third a cup of diced shallots and 3 minced garlic cloves, along with a half a teaspoon of salt and then a pinch of those red chili flakes. Now, if you are sensitive to heat or you're cooking for someone who's sensitive to heat, feel free to leave them out. It does add some nice flavor to the sauce, though.
And if we are opposed to shallots, sorry, I'm so bad at this stuff sometimes. I find them so annoying to peel, and so I
Oh my
never buy
gosh.
them. I'm like,
You could definitely use an onion.
okay, like a little,
You can use
like a quarter of an onion, finely chopped.
It's about, so a good size shallot's about a third of a cup. So just a third of a cup of
Okay,
a pretty finely diced. I would
okay,
keep it pretty fine just to keep the sauce feeling a little elevated.
okay,
But yeah, that's
perfect.
not a problem. And if you've got people who don't love garlic, you could leave that out.
Hmm. Hmm.
The sauce is extremely flavorful, even without the aromatics, it just dials it up a little bit more.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. So you've got your saucepan and it has some buttery, bubbling shallot and garlic or onion and garlic and some seasoning in that. And to that, then after about 5 or 6 minutes, when it's tender and very fragrant, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of tomato paste
Hmm.
and we're going to cook that down for about 2 minutes. So concentrated tomato paste always tastes better when it has a little time to heat in the pan.
Hmm.
And it's going to turn from kind of a bright red to a darker kind of brick red. And at that point, you're going to add a quarter cup of white wine
Hmm.
carefully if you're pouring it over an open flame. And if you are someone who doesn't care to cook with alcohol, you can certainly use either stock of some kind, or you can just at this point add a quarter cup of your salted pasta water to the sauce
Hmm.
in place of the wine. And then just plan to maybe, if you do that, squeeze in some lemon juice, maybe a couple of teaspoons in there. We're using lemon zest later in the recipe, so you could just squeeze off some of the lemon to give it a little bit of a kick.
Perfect. Yeah, that little acidity that wine brings. I like that.
Exactly.
Great
So we're going
idea.
to bring the sauce. Now you're kind of getting a little bit of a sauce. You've cooked. You're going to be cooking off some of that wine, but it'll be a little bit thinner. And we're going to simmer that just for about a minute. Next, we're going to add cooked seafood. So this recipe calls for 1 cup of cooked seafood. I often will use frozen but thawed
Hmm.
Argentine red shrimp. It's something I can get here
Oh,
really easily. So sweet. It is the best copycat lobster tail.
okay. So I know that you listened to my conversation with Marty
Hmm.
last week and enjoyed him very much. So my parents go to I'm sorry, this is such a weird story. They go to the Daytona flea market when they're here, and there is a fish guy there, and they buy like 3 or 4 bags of Argentine shrimp and bring them back here. And they kept telling me and Marty that they taste like lobster. And Marty doesn't like lobster. He loves shrimp, but he loves lobster. Doesn't like lobster. Well, they cooked these shrimp for him. He cannot stop talking about these. We've made them probably now. My parents have been gone for a couple months, and I made them like 4 or 5 times. And every time for the next like 4 days, about every 2 hours, he says, "Those shrimp, they were so good." So I guess this is just a big advertisement for Argentina shrimp, but like they're amazing.
I can't tell you how many times people would tell me, like, XYZ food tastes just like lobster. And I would taste it and think, have they tried lobster? Because that's not what it tastes like. But Argentine red shrimp really have just a beautiful, sweet flavor. The texture is flawless. They're reasonably priced. You can get them at Trader Joe's. You can often get them at your local Aldi store. They are fantastic. So, and for this recipe serves two. It can easily be scaled. So if you're hosting an event, you can double it, you can triple it
Mhm.
easily. But for a recipe for two, you only need a cup of additional seafood for
Mm.
this sauce. And
Mhm,
so
mhm.
a cup of shrimp, if, I know Trader Joe's does langoustine tails that are really reasonable and also
Mm,
have kind of that lobstery feel to them. That's a great option.
mhm, mhm.
But you don't have to spend a ton of money on this, and it is really a fantastic
Oh,
turnout in the
I'm
end.
I'm
So,
gonna. Well, he weirdly doesn't like lobster, but likes the Argentine shrimp. I don't know what he'll
oh,
think
don't tell
about.
him.
I know the lobster ravioli, but they're so good. And this is. I'm getting more and more excited about this every second. Okay, okay. So you're adding the cooked shrimp or
Hmm.
seafood of some
Yes.
kind to this sauce.
Yes, exactly. And then along with that, you're going to add half a cup of heavy cream and 1 teaspoon of lemon zest.
Mm.
So now you've got a really creamy kind of pink sauce in the pan. You're stirring it. This is over a low heat. You're not looking to, boil this. You barely want it at a simmer because you don't want that cream and the tomato sauce to interact poorly with each other.
I'm just
So keep
sorry.
that at a.
I'm
Mhm.
interrupting you. The pink. So I know we added the tomato paste, but the Argentine shrimp give off so much pink color. Do they do it if they? So these are already cooked. I know that they give off that color to like my butter sauce or whatever when I cook them in that sauce. Do they still have some left to give to this sauce even though they're already cooked?
They may, but the sauce is pretty aggressively pink just from the cream and the tomato
Okay.
paste is really what's coloring that.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
you can, I make this often with other types of shrimp, whatever frozen shrimp I have in my fridge, in my freezer. And so I wouldn't say the pink sauce is necessarily due to the shrimp,
Okay.
although the Argentine may be adding a little bit to that.
Gotcha.
So you stir all of that up together. And here's where we're going to kind of take a step back and evaluate the texture of the sauce. So you're going to kind of coat the back of a spoon, run your finger through it. You're going to taste it. What is the flavor profile? Do you feel like it needs a little bit more acidity? Do you feel like it's moving in the right direction? We're still going to add basil and Parmesan to it, but you're also evaluating the texture. Going to coat all of your pasta. The big question we're answering here is, does it need to be thinned out a little bit? If it's too thick, if it's kind of the texture of sour cream or yogurt, you're going to want to use a couple of tablespoons, and don't use the whole half cup. We're only going to use
Hmm.
a couple of tablespoons of our pasta water to thin that out. You could
Hmm.
always add more, very difficult to take water out. So that's what we're evaluating right now. And then you're going to add 3 tablespoons of fresh basil that you kind of roll and slice, and 2 tablespoons of either shredded or grated Parmesan cheese, whatever floats your boat. And then again, you're going to taste that, adjust seasonings. And notice now we have completely built our sauce, and our ravioli is just sitting there warm and nicely coated,
Hmm.
because the only thing you really want to do once you add the cooked ravioli to the sauce is very gently coat the ravioli and then serve it. If
Hmm.
you have to keep adding, like if I added it earlier in the process and okay, now we're adding basil and we're tossing, and now we're adding Parmesan and we're tossing, and now we're adding,
Right.
then you're going to start breaking those kind of delicate pieces of pasta apart. So we want to build the sauce completely, taste it, adjust the flavors and the seasonings, and then add in our cooked ravioli. We stir that very gently to coat. You keep it on the burner long enough where you feel like the ravioli is properly heated through. Again, we're not looking for a full boil here, just making sure it's heated through.
Hmm.
And then just now we're plating. You move to plating it. You can split it between two. These are pretty aggressive. They're generous servings, we'll say. And we're going to serve these. And I like to do a little bit of kind of fresh grated Parmesan over that. Or, Asiago is a great option. Grana Padano is a great option. These can be a little bit lower cost and similar flavor profiles, not identical, but similar, close enough. And then I love adding like a fresh basil leaf or two to
Hmm.
this to really kind of dress it up. And then you are ready to go.
It sounds amazing, unbelievably amazing. I'm super. I'm still just excited about the Argentine shrimp. I'm sorry. I'm a little obsessive sometimes. I do have a question, and I know what I
Yes.
think about this, and I'm pretty sure I know what you think because you just did it. But cheese and seafood, people sometimes are really opinionated about this. Do you know why? And what are your thoughts on it?
I think that it's like a lot of traditions handed down over time that some people feel very strongly about it. I don't have time for that nonsense, Christine. I love a good, I love a good seafood and cheese. I don't think it belongs with everything, but I think that's a matter of taste. So if you are cooking for someone who was raised in the old country and does not believe in seafood and cheese, you should feel free to leave out the Parmesan. But for the rest of us, I think it's an awesome option.
Yeah, I am with you. So with you. Okay, Christina, can you let people know where they can find you? I will link to this recipe for sure, but if they want to go see all of your amazing creations, what you're making, where should they go to find you?
So you can find me at weekdaypescatarian.com. That's where all of my recipes live. I post new recipes every week, and I'm always taking questions from readers. So if you have a question about seafood, You can send it to me there. I also have a free ebook you can sign up for right now, 5 of my favorite recipes to make for Valentine's Day. And that's whether you're having a date night with your
Ah.
significant other or hosting a Galentine's Day or a fun night with friends. They're all a little bit special, kind of like this lobster ravioli sauce, but they're still simple enough to pull off, even if you're not taking the whole day off work to prepare it. So anyone who signs up will get that in their inbox today. You can
And
also find me on Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Weekday Pescatarian.
perfect. Thank you so much and happy Valentine's Day.
Thanks, Christine. Same to you.
Isn't Christina lovely? And don't you also wish that you were living in Portugal eating all that seafood? I'm so jealous. But that lobster ravioli with that sauce with the shrimp in it, the Argentine shrimp, I know I'm obsessed about them. You know what? I'm going to tell you that actually Marty and I had talked about heading to the Daytona flea market this weekend, which is where my parents get their Argentine red shrimp from when they visit. I've not yet been to this flea market or seen how it involves shrimp. But anyhow, I want to go. We were going to go today, but today got crazy, especially because of Super Bowl tomorrow and other plans. But I have this on my to-do list because I am craving those shrimp. I need to have them soon. And I am definitely going to try them in that sauce on lobster ravioli when we get our hands on them again. Thank you, Christina, for such a wonderful recipe. And hey, everybody, make sure that you are following her on Instagram, weekday_pescatarian, and go check out all of her recipes. I've put that lobster ravioli sauce recipe link in the show notes for this podcast episode, so you can find it there. Or if you go to cookthestory.com/ROTD and go to the episode for today, which is February 8th of 2025, you will get to it from there. So now I am telling you about what's going on in my kitchen this week. And, there is a lot because I realized all of a sudden that we are traveling quite a bit in the next little while. I'm actually going to two conferences in the next month and a half, both of them food blogging conferences. One of them is in Savannah, Georgia, and I'm driving down there by myself to have a couple of days at the conference and a couple days relaxing. Super excited about that. And then I have another one in New Orleans that is also a food blogging conference, and I'm going for a couple extra days because one of my best friends in the world, Ryan, lives there. He was actually a guest on the earliest iteration of this podcast back when it was called TMI, Time Management Insider, which was before it was called Jump to Recipe. Anyhow, if you have been following along that long, you maybe heard me talk to Ryan a very long time ago. So I am going to hang out with him and his lovely girlfriend, Poppy, in New Orleans and go to that conference. And I'm also going to Puerto Rico with my daughter, just me and her for a few days. Soon we got a really good deal on a direct flight. And it was when my son was going on a trip for school. So that just kind of worked out. And finally, we're actually doing a big spring break trip. I'm kind of in this headspace where with my son in 11th grade, this is his second last spring break, but I also, am pretty confident that he's going to be doing more and more things independently as the next year rolls out. So this could be our last spring break trip together. And it happened to fall this year. Spring break fell on Marty's spring break from where he teaches as well. So we are going to Ecuador, the four of us. We're going to go see some blue-footed booties and tortoises in the Galapagos. And we're going to go to the Amazon rainforest for a couple days and spend some time in Quito, really high up in the air. That's a 2-mile high city. So lots of stuff. But all of that to say that with all that travel coming up, I am trying to get ahead on the recipe development and on recording episodes and all of that. It's all going to become pretty intense over the next little while. But yeah, so lots going on in the kitchen this week. So first, I am finalizing a recipe for taco bowls, which is something that I make for dinner for me and the kids all the time and just have never done the recipe on the site. So that is one thing that I am making, photographing, doing the video for. And then I think I mentioned this before. before that I got these racks of lamb on sale, and I'm doing like videos and pictures of how to cut them into lamb chops. And I think I told you that I was doing it and I had not actually gotten to it. So that is on my schedule for this week. And then also the salmon rice bowls. I know I've talked about the salmon bites and testing them and finding that they are better when they're not marinated than when they are marinated, which was interesting. But I am doing those in bowls with like edamame and sesame seeds and green onions. It's a really nice dinner bowl and doing the pictures for those. And then I was doing the cabbage rolls test recently because I do want to have a cabbage roll recipe on the site eventually. But I was doing the cabbage rolls and realized that there's a lot about like prepping the cabbage for making cabbage rolls, blanching it and coring it, then blanching it, and then also the different ways to cut cabbage, like if you want to have it in a stir fry versus if you want to have it in coleslaw. And so I've decided to back up a little bit and do a little video on the different ways to prep cabbage for anybody who doesn't know. So that is happening this week. I'm also planning to do the photos for the pierogies that I did a while back. I've had them in the freezer, as I always do. When I make pierogies, I make a big batch and they go in the freezer. And they've been in the freezer. And so I'm going to, bring up a pot of water to the boil, put them in there and sort of heat them through, and then plate them up with the onions and butter and sour cream and do the pictures for the pierogies. And yeah, there is one more thing on the list. I am doing a first test for a fried chicken recipe. Now, this is not something that I grew up having or know very well, but I actually had a comment on Cook the Story from a reader who was doing one of my breaded chicken recipes, asking specifically for the fried chicken. And I was like, challenge accepted. And so I am working on that. Been doing a lot of research, looking at various cookbooks and online to see what exactly is required of this classic dish, and gonna try my first attempt. I'm also planning to go for lunch at one of the restaurants in town here where I live. It has fried chicken on the menu. I've seen it there before, but I've never ordered it. So I want to order theirs and make sure that what I'm making tastes like what the restaurant is making. You know what I mean? So yeah, that is what's going on in my kitchen. Lots and lots of good tasting food, right? Okay, next on our show agenda, what is going live on the websites this week? I have two very exciting ones. Either one could be a nice thing for Valentine's Day. Also, the first is a rack of lamb that you start by pan frying and then you top it with this lemony herby mixture and it goes in the oven to finish. Really, really great. And I'm really happy with how that turned out. It's probably my favorite rack of lamb that I've ever made. And I've made a lot of them over the years. That is probably my favorite recipe. And then the other one is the how to cook king oyster mushrooms recipe. That's going live on the Cookful. The rack of lamb is on Cook the Story. The oyster mushrooms, king oyster mushrooms in particular, which are not like oyster mushrooms. They look different. We had them for the first time when we were in Belgium this summer. They were selling them whole everywhere, actually. I saw them in a bunch of different grocery stores and markets. And we bought them and cooked them up in our little Brussels kitchen, and we all really liked them. And, I honestly thought I'd never have them again because I'd never seen them before. But we got back here, and now they are selling them at my local grocery store, sliced in a package. So you get 4 thick slices of these mushrooms in a packet. And so, of course, I bought them and started experimenting, and now they are going up on the site. And I will say, not only have I now seen them in the grocery store here, we've also seen them on a menu in downtown Orlando at a kind of fancy restaurant. We were at SoCo not long ago, and they were on their appetizer menu. So they are showing up. If you haven't tried them, if you spot them, king oyster mushrooms, and that is going live on February 10th on the Cookful. As to what you might be hearing on this podcast this week, if you are subscribed, there's a new recipe every single day. If you're not subscribed, make sure you are. Just open up your phone, go to your favorite podcast app and search for Recipe of the Day. You will find it there. Hit subscribe or follow and you will get all of these. So I am talking about Well, tomorrow, just a little condiment that you could add to your Super Bowl dinner meal party thing if you needed something a little extra. And then we're doing an Instant Pot pork loin this week. Oh, a little French sauce, getting in that Valentine's Day mood. Also, a seafood pasta in that same spirit. And oh, the rack of lamb. I'm telling you about that this week as well. Lots of delicious food coming your way. Make sure you're subscribed or go to cookthestory.com/ROTD and you can get it all there too. Thank you to Christina from Weekday Pescatarian for that lovely recipe and conversation. Everybody make sure you go follow her Instagram, weekday_pescatarian. And thank you for listening. I hope you have a blast tomorrow watching the football or the commercials, eating that baked brie. I know you wanna. Whatever you're doing, I hope it is fantastic. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all-new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. Have a great weekend. Let's get cooking.